Greetings, welcome back to Black Bear News, where we are discussing abrupt climate change, environmental breakdown, and things of that nature. I want to thank everybody for continuing to come over to the channel and subscribe. Slowly getting back up to, we're about halfway to the subscribership that I was at on my other channel. But thank you guys for continuing to support, and thank you for all the kind and generous donations over the last few weeks. I really appreciate it, you guys. It helps more than you know. Just want to get into a couple articles today. Before that, I just wanted to again briefly touch on a very key element of this channel, and the key element is this: that if you think that climate change is a conspiracy, you're brainwashed by an ideological camp, generally known as conservatism. But all kinds of people think this thought. And, I'm not here carrying a torch for any kind of liberal agenda. I'm not here parroting or repeating things that I think sound good. This is something that I have been looking at and thinking about and studying and witnessing with my own eyes for many years. It's not only undeniable, the amount of evidence backing up what I'm saying is absolutely monumental. I mean, you can't wish it away. You can't explain it away. You can't, there's just too many things going on for it to not be happening. I mean, even if you took out the greenhouse gases cause global warming equation, right? Which some people are like, no, it's not greenhouse gases that are warming the earth. It's, I don't know, they're causing climate destruction. It's pole shift or grand solar minimum or whatever it is. Even if we take out the equation of greenhouse gases, we are still destroying this planet. There are too many people consuming too many resources, polluting hand over fist as fast as we can. We're polluting everything around us, polluting it to the point where it will not support us anymore. Just look at the evidence. There are mountains and mountains of evidence. There's just garbage everywhere. There's plastic in the oceans. We are cutting down forests as fast as we can to grow palm oil. We are building dams as fast as we can, further destroying nature. We are, we're invading public lands or places that have been, kept as nature preserves. We are destroying those by opening them up to oil exploration and mining and, whatever else people are doing in there. We are poaching animals to death. We are driving animals to extinction at incredible rates. And that is it's not faked data. It's not something that, some scientists somewhere are cooking up and writing articles about. It's not fake because you can actually witness it with your own eyes. There are just so many things going on that it creates an entire picture. And so, you really have to open yourself up to the entire picture. I welcome climate deniers to this channel. Hang out, don't come over here and just spew some shit, don't come over here and just start writing like, just hang, cool the jets. Nobody's going to run you off. If you want to have an intelligent conversation, that would be more than welcome. There's plenty of people on here that would be willing to talk you through the basics of climate change or abrupt climate change or climate destruction. But you don't really need to have a conversation. Just hang out and listen to what I'm talking about. I'm not, this is actually in response, all of this rant is in response to a comment somebody left earlier today. And, you know, it's the same comment over and over again by different people. Like, you don't know what you're talking about. You're a liberal, lunatic wacko. Climate change isn't real, you stupid. Like, you know, like a comment like that. Like, dude, nobody's, you're not going to convince anybody of your point if you're going to come at people like that. You're not making a logical argument. You're not even making an argument at all. You're just spewing some bullshit. So try and stop all that, slow it down, and take a seat and just hang out for a while. Just listen to the videos, read the comments, interact with some people. It's, you know, put a little civility in your game, and you know, you're welcome to hang out here. Oh darn it! And there was an article that I wanted to read, and I think here it is. So we're going to start with a climate destruction article. Waiting for it to open up. And I would like to add, lastly, that this channel, I guess, one of my main philosophies on this channel is not everything is a conspiracy, and not every conspiracy is false. So, you know, if you think everything is a conspiracy, drop it. If you think that every conspiracy is some lunatic, alt-right, conservative, you know, whatever that is, drop it. Just drop it. Open your mind and hang out for a bit. Starting with the article from the San Francisco Gate, Wednesday, March 7th, West Coast sardine fishing closed for fourth year. Alarming 97% population decline. I'd say that's alarming. Nearly 20,000 Pacific sardines can be found at the Monterey Bay Aquarium, originally the site. Oh, they're talking about an image, excuse me. Sardine fishing nets will remain empty for a fourth straight year along the West Coast, where biologists are comparing the dramatic decline of the schooling fish to the infamous collapse that led to the downfall of Monterey's once thriving cannery row. The northern Pacific sardine population, stretching from Mexico to British Columbia, has plummeted 97% since 2006. According to an assessment released this week by the National Marine Fisheries Service and the Pacific Fishery Management Council, the perilously low numbers give regulators no choice but to close fishing, which has been scheduled to start July 1st from Mexico to the Canadian border. The 14 voting members of the Fishery Council, which makes policy along the coasts of California, Oregon, and Washington, will meet April 8th in Portland, Oregon to discuss the results. But everyone agrees a fishing ban is inevitable. The Council is required by federal law to close ocean fishing when the numbers fall this far below conservation objectives. Oh, go away, advertisement. The sardine population has completely crashed, said Ben Entic Knapp, scientist for Oceana, an ocean conservation advocacy group. It is alarming. The sardine population is just under 3% of its peak population in 2006, when the tiny fish, which are measured using their collective weight as if inside a fishing net, reached 774,784 metric tons, or almost 2 million metric tons, according to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. The latest assessment projects that 52,065 metric tons of sardines will be swimming along the West Coast on July 1st. That's well below the 150,000 metric ton threshold required for commercial fishing. Last year's estimate was 86,586. Biologists blame the collapse on natural fluctuations, which have been common throughout history. Okie dokie. According to recent sediment studies, as well as changing ocean conditions, I wonder what those are. Conservationists, however, believe overfishing made a bad situation worse. Yeah, I would put my money on the last two things and not the first thing. And Ed Ticknap said regulators allowed sardine fishing to continue until 2015, despite warnings by scientists that the population was ready to collapse. He said the same mistake was made in the mid-1950s when the Monterey Bay canneries, made famous by John Steinbeck's novel Cannery Row, began failing. Stiff quotas and catch limits required under federal law by the 1976 Magnuson-Stevens Fishery Conservation and Management Act helped save the tiny epipelagic fish, and their population increased throughout the 1990s. In the 2000s, Monterey Bay once again became the Bay Area hub of sardine fishing, with large population also thriving off the coast of San Francisco. Fishing fleets hauled in huge quantities of the nutrient-rich fish around the Channel Islands in Southern California and along the Oregon coast. It wasn't unusual for a boat to bring in up to 65 tons a day of sardines, which are generally frozen in big blocks for use as bait and commercial longline fishing and for feed at Australian and Japanese bluefin tuna farms. The catch was bringing in 10 million to 20 million in annual revenue until the latest collapse. At the April meeting, Oceana will ask fishery managers to declare the population overfished and develop a recovery plan. And there you go. Overfishing. I'd like to know more about the ocean conditions that I'm sure are adding to this. Salmon is in big, big trouble, as well as some other fish. Oysters are in big trouble too. Let's see, moving on to the next article. Southern Californians know climate change is real, it is deadly, and it is here. An earthly paradise is ravaged by inferno and flood, the earth itself rising to proclaim a horrifying and deadly new normal. When people ask me where I live and I say Santa Barbara, I wait for the inevitable reply, paradise, and the quizzical look that says, how does one live there rather than vacation? It's as if I had replied, Disneyland. People who visit from colder climates have been complaining lately. Last year, when it finally rained after 6 years of drought and we were practically on our knees with gratitude, a woman from New England remarked, I didn't come here for the rain. I almost said, well, then why the heck don't you go back home? Another pestered a friend, when was her club in Montecito going to open? My friend replied, I think it's under 8 feet of mud. She wanted to add, and they're still looking for bodies. It's always been a struggle here to have a normal life, to hold on to reality. In December, we got a mega dose of reality when the biggest fire in California's history burned more than 270,000 acres. 7 cities were evacuated. When the air was labeled hazardous for 3 days running, we made plans to leave. On Sunday morning, my phone pinged a mandatory evacuation from Montecito. I called a friend who lives there. Packing, she said. The fire was less than a mile away. I drove through the brown air and falling ash to a gas station, and when I got there, my credit card wouldn't work. The power was out. I stood in the zombie snow as others lined up behind me. Finally, we drove north to a hotel on the coast where, with evacuated friends, we hiked and walked together along the shore. After we'd been there a few days, I woke up at 3 a.m. and thought of a movie I'd watched years ago. Ava Gardner and Gregory Peck waiting for the fallout from a nuclear war in the Northern Hemisphere to float on the wind to them in Australia. They were going to die, and everyone and everything they cared about was already dead or was going to be. I remembered a lot of drinking and dancing, fruitless searching by submarine along the coasts of the United States for survivors, and Fred Astaire fixing up his sports car so he could rev it up in his garage and commit suicide. I thought, we are on the beach. I need to see this movie. I had no idea this movie even existed. Like them, we are hardly refugees. We hadn't walked out of our houses, not knowing where we are going or who would take us in. But still, hanging over our hikes was dread. And what was coming towards us? Immediately, it was the fire. The fire at that point was burning so hot, it was basically gas because of the long drought, the lack of rain this season, and Santa Ana winds in December. But we were waiting for something else too. And then the firefighters, all 8,549 of them, stopped the fire and went home for Christmas. In early January, a tropical storm from the south hit the newly burned mountains above Montesino between 2 and 3 in the morning and dropped a half inch of rain in 5 minutes. A force of water and ash and soil, no longer secured by plants, picked up boulders on its way down the mountain and swept into town. My friends in Montecito were just too tired to evacuate ahead of this storm. A firefighter told them the day before, if you hear a sound like a freight train, get up on the second story of the roof, or the roof. They woke up at 3 under a red sky from houses exploding over severed gas lines, and they heard it. A terrible grinding roar. Buried houses and cars and people. It buried the freeway and the train tracks, all the way to the ocean. A body of a man was found on the beach. Not far from him was the body of a bear. Broken houses lined mud-caked streets, and 2 people were still missing, including a 2-year-old. We are no longer a pretty backdrop, and our hearts aren't pretty either. And we know now what the dread was we felt in December. Call it climate change or climate collapse. That was the big dread behind the smaller ones. Climate believers, climate deniers, deep in our hearts, we think it will happen somewhere else or in some other time, in 2025 or 2040 or next year. But we are here to tell you in this postcard from the former paradise that it won't happen next year or somewhere else. It will happen right where you live, and it could happen today. No one will be spared. So if you are driving around and flying on airplanes and ordering things to be shipped by truck and making money off oil stock the way so many of us are, like there's no tomorrow, we are here to tell you there is a tomorrow, and we are living in it. If you visit, talk to us as if our dose of mega reality is not some singular string of bad luck or an inconvenience to you. Help tether us to the reality we are, all of us, living in now, and that we in Southern California don't want to forget in the face of returning to normal. Excuse me. Give us the one gift that will help us. Please, let's not go back to business as usual. That was by Nora Gallagher. Somebody out there talking about the actual severity and reality of. Moving on. This is from Thomson Reuters Foundation News, Saturday, March 3rd, 2018, by Charles Makoka. Zambia taps climate fund to battle worsening drought. Lilongwe, March 3rd. Zambian farmers facing more extreme weather are set to get better early warning and weather information to help them cope as part of a new grant from the Green Climate Fund. In a funding round announced this week, the International Climate Fund approved $32 million toward a broader effort by the United Nations Development Program, the UN Food and Agricultural Organization, FAO, and the World Food Program to help shore up food security and keep farmers from slipping into poverty. The UN agencies had already raised $125 million toward the effort, which aims to help fight poverty among the 940,000 farmers hit by extreme weather in Zambia, according to Janet Rogan, a UNDP representative in the country. The effort aims to help farmers plan for climate risks, make the farming more resilient and diversified, and give them better access to markets, said Simon Pollock, a spokesman for the Green Climate Fund, in an email interview. In addition, this intervention is specifically designed to create economic opportunities for women, Pollock told the Thomson Reuters Foundation. The project targets 16 particularly climate vulnerable districts in the country where worsening droughts and flooding have been a problem. Zambia, like many of its southern African neighbors, is struggling with strengthening climate impacts in the face of already widespread poverty. Excuse me. According to the 2016 UNDP Human Development Report, about 60% of the country's people live below the poverty line, more than 40% of those in extreme poverty. The report says 70% of Zambians rely on agriculture for a living, and agriculture, forestry, and fishing contribute 24% of the country's gross domestic product. Eric Chipeta, an energy and environmental analyst in Zambia for UNDP, said the effort would, for instance, provide Zambian farmers with insurance that issues automatic payouts when certain rainfall or temperature thresholds are passed. The crops are presumed dead or damaged. The initiative will go a long way to strengthen the capacity of farmers to plan for climate risks and provide the opportunity for weather index insurance even in times of poor rains, he told the Thomson Reuters Foundation. Zambia has seen increasingly unpredictable weather, including drought this year, that hit at the time when maize, the country's staple crop, began putting out tassels, Chipita said. Drought at that point can cut harvest significantly, experts say. In many areas of Zambia, there is a high rate of poverty, meaning efforts to end hunger and poverty are at risk if we don't take immediate action to adapt agricultural practices to changing climate conditions. Chola Chabala, Zambia's permanent secretary for national development planning, said in a press statement. Chipeta said that the increasing frequency and intensity of extreme weather has already severely affected Zambian farmers. The GCF-backed initiative will be rolled out with support from national institutions, such as Zambia's Ministry of Agriculture and the Zambia Meteorological Department, Chipeta said. That's the end of that article. Drought hitting other countries in Africa. And lastly, I'm going to read this. This is from cleantechnica.com, June 12th, 2015. A guest contributor who knows anonymously, I guess. So somebody, thank you all for sending me these articles. Majority of the articles I read are sent to me by viewers, and I appreciate you keeping me well stocked in things to read, things to investigate. Solar power now covers more than 1% of global electricity demand. This is in 2015. In 3 countries in Europe, Italy, Germany, and Greece, solar PV supplies more than 7% of electricity demand. This is reported by Solar Power Europe. China is the fastest growing market. Research company Global Data has adjusted projected new capacity in China for 2015 upwards. Last year, 40 gigawatts of new solar capacity was installed worldwide, compared to 38.4 gigawatts in 2013, notes Solar Power Europe. Cumulative capacity is now 178 gigawatts. In terms of generation, this is equivalent to 33 coal-fired power stations of 1 gigawatt, notes SPE. In Europe last year, 7 gigawatts was installed, which was less than in 2013. The UK was the fastest growing market, contributing 2.4 gigawatts. Europe now installs less solar power capacity than China or Japan individually, but still has more than the US. However, Europe is still the world's largest player, with more than 88 gigawatts installed at the end of 2014. China is currently the fastest growing market, installing 10.6 gigawatts in 2014, followed by Japan with 9.7 gigawatts, and the US with just over 6.5 gigawatts. SPE says capacity could reach 540 gigawatts in 5 years' time in a high growth scenario and would reach 396 gigawatts in a low support case. The cost of PV systems continued to decline in 2014, notes SPE. System prices below one euro per watt are now common in several European countries, or WP, I don't know what that is. While prices around $1 WP have been reported in most competitive tenders. This has been achieved thanks to declining prices of modules, except in Europe, where the minimum import price of modules from China has maintained prices at a higher than market level, and inverters combined with economies of scale that brought installation costs down much faster than many expected. SPE notes that PV power prices below $60 per megawatt have been granted in one project in Dubai, which remains to be proven to be profitable. Other calls revealed prices between $67 and $80 per megawatt. These should be considered as best-in-class examples for the solar generation cost within a favorable context. Cost of capital is one of the main barriers to the decrease of solar electricity cost, according to SPE. Well, so somebody sent this to me, saying that, I guess pointing out that even in 2015, solar power was at 1% of global energy output. And there have been claims, or I think there were refuting claims that we were, you know, I don't know what they said. I'm sorry. It was quite high. Like, I want to say they were saying like 70% or something. I don't know what the heck. That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, since 2014, of course, we have added much more solar capabilities. I just saw an article about Australian solar panels generating too much electricity at peak hours or during certain times. And Germany also has claimed to generate like a great percentage of their power on certain days, you know, like in the 80 or 90 percentile, all renewable energy sources. I don't know how true that is or what. The problem is, of course, we have the Trump administration putting a tax on solar power, trying to give us coal again, and trying to give us, you know, oil dominance again. Who knows where this is going? We're not going to add a lot more solar power, I believe, in the next couple of years. I'm sure it's going to go way down. The problem is that solar power is not going to give us the same amount of energy that petroleum does or coal does. It's just not going to do it. It's just not going to power an Earth filled with, you know, 7 or 8 billion people. It's not soon. And then you have the cost of actually building those panels. You have the rare metals that are needed for those panels. You have the construction of those panels, which usually takes fossil fuels. You know, you're contributing to business as usual. You're contributing to more industrial civilization by switching to these technologies. Should we do it anyways? I don't know. I guess so. I don't really have a personal answer for that. I mean, obviously, we're not going to have enough resources to build solar panels that are going to feed 7 to 8 billion people. It's just not going to happen. So the real question becomes, how do we live with less oil? How do we live with less energy? How do we lower our standard of living? How do we lower the comfort level that we're used to in order to live more in tune with the natural world? There are many ways. I've already talked about how many ways there are, but that's just something for you to think about, for you to talk with your friends and family about, for you to alert, you know, as many people as possible as you can about. You know, if I could have solar panels on my house and get most of my energy generated from solar, I would absolutely do it. I would love to do it. I would love to have it. You know, but at the end of the day, that also means, you know, if I really truly want to go off grid, if anybody does, you're going to have to reconfigure your life. You're going to have to reconfigure your house, or how you cool your house, or heat your house, or how you think about the heat that you might need, or, you know, AC or whatever. You're going to have to regulate yourself and how you live in the world in order to make that work. Siri, I'm not talking to you. So, just stuff to think about, stuff to ponder, stuff to contemplate. That's all I have for you tonight. I want to thank you, as always, for your eyes, your ears, and your conscience. I hope to be back tomorrow with another video. Until next time, peace.